Okay, so this is the first video in Further Mechanics 2, Chapter 1, Circular Motion, and I would actually probably recommend, if you're in Year 12, if you're at the beginning of all of your studies, I'd probably recommend starting with Chapter 2, which is about centres of mass, just because this chapter includes quite a lot of knowledge that would be useful to have from normal maths and from sort of normal maths mechanics as well, particularly things to do with forces at angles. We've even got some stuff with differentiation and some differential equations. So if you can leave this unit or this chapter until a little bit later, I think you'll probably find it a lot more accessible, because I'm not going to be teaching all of these concepts from scratch. I'm going to kind of be assuming you're at the kind of level to be able to access lots of the things that are in here. But I obviously will be explaining them as we go. So this first chapter is about circular motion, and so far we've essentially only looked at particles that are moving in a straight line. And now what we do is we concern ourselves with particles moving in circles or in arcs of circles. And these might be some of these things that we've got here. So it could be like cars going around corners or circular tracks. It could be about planets orbiting stars, that's circular motion. Could even be like swinging a ball on a piece of string in a horizontal circle. So if you imagine like a ball at an end of a piece of string and you're kind of like swinging it around above your head, a bit like a lasso kind of thing. And, you know, even like loops on a roller coaster could be modeled using circular motion. And I've kind of just done this bit of an example down here, that this sort of curved flight path that we've got of this plane here, you can see that you can make up some interesting curves that are all sort of made out of different arcs of circles that we've got here. So each part of these journeys that we've got here, we could model using chapter 1's circular motion that we've got. And that's what I've just written down this bit here. Now, it's worth noting that chapter 1 is going to be split into two different parts. There's the first 3 exercises, which are all horizontal circles, and that's in AS, and I'll do some AS questions after that. And then the last 2 exercises are about vertical circles, so that's kind of things moving around vertically rather than in a horizontal plane instead. And they are actually quite different to the first half of this chapter, so you can expect there to be quite a big distinction between ABC and then DE. And as usual, I'll always do some exam questions for each of these sections, because we know that they like to make the exams a little bit harder than what there is in the textbook, and I'll try and kind of guide you through that part that we've got there. So we're going to start off by thinking about some terminology that we're going to need to be able to even do circular motion, and the first thing is to do with angular speed. So when something is rotating around a circle at a constant rate, kind of going around a circle like this, its speed will depend on how close to the centre it is. Something closer to the centre moves slower than something further away from the centre. And this link here you can use if you've downloaded the PDF, you can use this as a hyperlink to a video, and this is also a hyperlink to a video. Alternatively, you can just look at an analog clock that you've got to see how these things move. So when I'm going to jump to this video, we're going to concentrate one point at this red dot, and we're then also going to concentrate at the end of it. And we're just going to visualize how the red part is going to be moving slower and the blue part is going to be moving faster, even though the entire hand is moving at the same rate that we've got there. So if you look at kind of the red part, which is sort of towards the center, it is moving quite slowly. But if you look at the part that's right on the outside of the circle, which is the blue part that we had there, that blue part is going to be moving faster. So I don't know, if you just imagine that you were a tiny little ant that was sat on the edge of that clock hand, it would feel like a lot faster than if it was sat much closer to the center of that clock that we've got there. But the key thing is here is that the angular speed is the same no matter where you are. That radius or that clock hand is rotating at the same rate. It's not like actually we've got it going in sort of 2 different rates. This clock hand that we've got is moving at a constant rate around. So what angular speed does, angular speed measures the rate of rotation, and this is the rate of change of the angle at the center. For horizontal circles, it will be constant. So how the angle is changing, if we were measuring it, say, from the 12 o'clock, it's how that angle is increasing. That angle is increasing at a constant rate. And the standard unit is going to be of radians per second. So like I mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't learned about radians yet, you probably will do quite soon if you're doing further maths because of everything with complex numbers. And we would write it as rad s to the minus 1 radians per second. And it is usually written using lowercase omega, which is the last letter of the Greek alphabet. And it's the lowercase version, which looks like a W. You'll see me drawing this a lot, but it kind of goes like that. When I draw my W's, they look like this, okay? And we're going to explore a little bit more about angular speed, but in fact, we're going to think about answering a few of these questions that we've got down here. So we're going to think about the angular speed of the seconds hand of a clock. Now, obviously, the seconds hand of a clock is going to be moving around the clock constantly, and it will do a full revolution in 60 seconds that we've got here. So the first thing is saying in how many radians is it going to be doing in a minute? Well, that's my units, radians per minute that we've got there. And we're going to be thinking, how many radians is it doing in 1 minute? Well, we remember this, that if we have a full rotation, we're saying the whole rotation is 2 pi radians if something is going to start from there and go all the way around. This line that I've got is representing the clock hand. So for part A, it is literally going to be 2 pi radians per minute, because that's how many radians it's doing in 1 minute. We then want to talk about radians per second. Well, that's going to be 2 pi. I'm going to divide it by 60 to find out how many radians it's moving in 1 second. So now I've got it as radians per second, which is the same, of course, as pi over 30 radians per second. Now, the last part, I haven't actually said what this means, but I'm sure you can guess what the rev is standing for. The rev is standing for revolution. Now, a revolution is 1 complete turn. So 1 revolution is 1 complete turn around the circle. So we're asking ourselves a question, how many revolutions is it doing per second? Well, if 1 revolution is going to be 2 pi, if we take the revolution, this is how many radians it is doing per second. If we divide this by 2 pi, we will find out how many complete revolutions it's doing. So if I do pi over 30, and if I divide that by 2 pi, that will tell me how many revolutions it's going to be per second. So that is pi over 30 multiplied by 1 over 2 pi. Of course, the pi is going to cancel out here and here, and we just get with 1 over 60. And we're going to try and explain why that makes sense. We've got 1 over 60 revolutions per second. Well, why is it 1 over 60? Because it's the seconds hand of a clock, and we're saying how much of a circle, how many revolutions is it doing every second? Well, it's obviously going to do 1/60th of a complete revolution because it's the second hand. The second hand moves 1/60th of a circle for every second that it ticks along. Now we're going to do a little bit more of the theory that we've got here, and we're going to try and see if we can come up with this formula that we've got down here about the velocity of the particle at a particular point on the circle that we've got here. So just looking at this diagram that we've got, this is kind of like a bird's eye view that we've got. We've got our center of the circle, we've got point A and point B, and something is moving from point A to point B. It's kind of traveling around the circle like this, and the velocity that it's moving around the outside, or the speed that it's moving, I should say, we're calling that its linear speed, how fast it is moving. And we're going to try and see if we can work out, how do we come up with this formula that we've got down here. So we've got the displacement of the particle. The displacement is s, and we're saying that it's r theta. That is because the distance between A and B is r theta. This is because when theta is in radians, the arc of a circle is r theta. This is from Pure Year 2, Chapter 5. This distance between A and B is just r multiplied by theta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and differentiate this so that I'm going from something that's the displacement or from the distance to try and get what the speed is going to be. And I have to differentiate that with respect to time. So I'm going to say ds dt, and again, this is from normal variable acceleration, which is why I'm kind of advising you to leave this a bit later. When you differentiate the distance or the displacement, you end up with the velocity. And now I'm going to differentiate this r theta. So I need to differentiate with respect to time this r theta that we've got here. Now, r is just a constant. R is just a constant, so it's actually just going to stay kind of like outside the front. But theta, in this case, is going to vary depending on how far around the circle that it's travelled. So this is going to be a variable that we've got here. And I'm actually just going to say, when I differentiate theta with respect to t, I just get d theta by t, d theta dt. Now, sometimes d theta by dt, you might see it written somewhere in the textbook with a theta with a dot above it. If you've never seen this dot notation, it just means that something has been differentiated with respect to time. Now, this last thing I'm going to label is that d theta dt is the rate of change of the angle. And the rate of change of the angle is what we looked at on this previous change. The rate of change of the angle at the center is the angular speed, which we're going to use this lowercase omega for this. So we're going to say that this is the angular speed. Hence, we can just say that it is omega. So V equals R omega that we've got here. So for a particle moving around a circle with radius r, which is a constant, and with linear speed v, the linear speed is equal to r multiplied by the angular speed that we've got here. This kind of makes sense because note how if the radius was smaller, so if it wasn't all the way out here, if it was a smaller circle like this, but it still had the same angular speed, the particle is closer to the center, so the linear speed also reduces. Sorry, I think just then I said it was moving faster, but on the outside it would feel like it was moving faster, whereas if it was closer to the center, it would be also, its speed would be reduced. So that's why the speed is directly proportional to the size of the radius that we've got there. So in the next video, I'm going to do some examples about this. We're going to actually do some calculations for these kinds of things, and then that will just have us ready for exercise 1A.